Picture this, a sacred practice from the heart of Tibetan Buddhism called Yab-Yum, where compassion and wisdom unite in a divine embrace. It's a path to awakening, but here's the catch. It's not something you can walk alone. Why? Because without a guide, a guru, you might lose yourself in the maze of your own mind. I'm here to take you on a journey into this mystical practice, revealing why a qualified teacher is your key to unlocking its secrets. Whether you're new to Buddhism or just curious, stick with me to discover how this ancient wisdom can transform your life. And when you're done, share your thoughts in the comments. What does balance mean to you? Hit that subscribe button and let's dive in. The Mirror of Trust. In the high valleys of Tibet, where the wind hums mantras through snow-dusted peaks, a young seeker named Tenzin knelt before a low wooden table, his breath visible in the crisp air of the monastery. His heart raced, not from fear, but from the electric anticipation of meeting his teacher, Lama Dorje, a master of the sacred Yab-Yum practice. The room was dim, lit only by butter lamps that flickered like stars against the Thangka paintings on the walls, each depicting deities locked in divine embrace. Tenzin had heard whispers of this practice, its profound union of wisdom and compassion, its promise of awakening, but he knew nothing of its depths. What he did know, what pulsed through him like a drumbeat, was the unshakable trust he felt in Lama Dorje. This trust, he would soon learn, was the golden thread that wove the tapestry of Yab-Yum, a practice where the guru's guidance was not just helpful, but essential, a beacon in the storm of spiritual transformation. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast, uncharted ocean, the waves of your own mind crashing against the shore of doubt and desire. Without a guide, you might drown in those waters, mistaking illusion for truth. This is why the guru, the uppermost guide in Tibetan Tantra, is not merely a teacher but a mirror, reflecting your own potential back to you. Tenzin's first meeting with Lama Dorje was no grand ceremony, no thunderclap of revelation. Instead, it was a quiet moment, a shared cup of yak butter tea, and a question that pierced the young man's heart. Are you ready to see yourself as you truly are? The simplicity of those words sent a shiver through Tenzin, igniting a curiosity that would not let him turn away. And so begins the dance of Yab-Yum, not in the physical union of forms, but in the surrender of the self to the wisdom of a qualified guide. The practice of Yab-Yum, the sacred union of male and female energies, is often misunderstood, reduced to mere ritual or symbol. But its essence lies deeper, in the alchemy of balancing compassion and wisdom within the practitioner's own mind. It is a path that demands courage, for it requires facing the raw, unfiltered truth of one's own nature. Yet, to walk this path alone is to court disaster. The guru, like a seasoned navigator, knows the hidden currents of the mind, the places where ego disguises itself as devotion or fear masquerades as humility. Lama Dorje, with his weathered face and eyes that seemed to hold the secrets of 1,000 lifetimes, was such a navigator. He had seen countless students falter, not because they lacked effort, but because they lacked trust, in themselves, in the practice, and most crucially in their guide. Consider the story of Yeshe, a disciple who came to Lama Dorje years before Tenzin. Yeshe was brilliant, her mind sharp as a diamond, her dedication fierce. She had studied the sutras, memorized the tantras, and could recite the mantras of Avalokiteshvara with flawless precision. Yet, when she began the Yab-Yum practice, she stumbled. She saw the practice as a puzzle to solve, a goal to achieve, and in her ambition, ascendancy, she ignored the subtle guidance of her guru. Lama Dorje had warned her. The practice is not a mountain to climb, but a river to flow with. Let go of your need to control. Yeshe, confident in her intellect, pressed forward, visualizing the deities in solitude, convinced she could master the practice through sheer will. But her meditations grew chaotic, her visions fragmented. Frustrated, she returned to Lama Dorje, who smiled gently and said, "You are trying to hold the wind. Trust the path, not your map." It was only when Yeshe surrendered her pride, sitting at her guru's feet and following his instructions with humility, that the practice began to unfold. The deities in her visualizations became clear, their embrace a mirror of her own inner harmony. Her trust in Lama Dorje transformed her practice from a struggle into a dance. What is it about the guru that makes such a difference? Picture a flame in a storm, fragile yet unwavering. The guru is the one who shields that flame, ensuring it grows rather than gutters out. In Yab-Yum, the practitioner seeks to embody the union of wisdom, the feminine, often visualized as the deity Prajnaparamita, and compassion, the masculine, often Avalokiteshvara. But these are not mere concepts, they are living energies, wild and unpredictable. Without a guru's guidance, the practitioner risks becoming lost in their own projections, mistaking fleeting emotions for divine insight. Lama Dorje taught Tenzin this through a simple exercise. He asked him to meditate on the deity pair in Yab-Yum, but to do so while holding a small stone in his hand. "This stone is your mind," he said. "Hold it lightly, and it will guide you. Clench it tightly, and it will weigh you down." Tenzin, eager to prove himself, gripped the stone until his knuckles whitened. His visions were blurred, his mind restless. Only when he relaxed his grip, trusting his guru's words, did the deities appear vividly, their embrace a radiant unity of stillness and movement. The guru's role is not to dictate, but to illuminate. Lama Dorje never told Tenzin what to see or feel in his practice. Instead, he asked questions that cut through the fog of Tenzin's doubts. What is the source of your fear? What is the shape of your longing? Each question was a key, unlocking doors Tenzin didn't know existed. One evening, as they sat by the monastery's hearth, Lama Dorje shared a story of his own teacher, a lama who had guided him through his first Yab-Yum practice. "I was terrified," he admitted, his voice soft but steady. "I thought I would lose myself in the practice, that I would dissolve into nothing. My teacher simply said, 'Good, let yourself dissolve. I will hold the space for you to return.' And he did. That trust, that surrender, was what allowed Lama Dorje to touch the infinite without fear." Tenzin listened, his heart pounding, feeling the pull of something vast and luminous just beyond his reach. He wanted to chase it, to grasp it, but Lama Dorje's steady gaze reminded him, "Trust the guide, trust the path." As Tenzin continued his training, he began to understand that Yab-Yum was not a destination but a process, a sacred dialogue between the self and the infinite. The guru was the bridge between the two, not imposing his will, but clearing the path for Tenzin's own discovery. One day, during a retreat in a remote cave, Tenzin faltered in his practice, overwhelmed by visions that felt too vast, too chaotic. He wanted to run, to abandon the meditation, but Lama Dorje's voice echoed in his mind. "Stay with it. I am here." And so he stayed, breathing through the storm, until the vision settled into a luminous embrace of deities, their union a reflection of his own inner balance. The feeling was electric, a surge of clarity that left him trembling with awe. He emerged from the cave, tears in his eyes, and found Lama Dorje waiting, a knowing smile on his face. "You see," he said, "the practice is alive when you trust." And so, Tenzin's journey continued, each step guided by the quiet wisdom of his guru. The path of Yab-Yum was not one of conquest, but of surrender, not of striving, but of trusting, The guru was not a ruler, but a companion, walking beside the disciple, pointing to the light that was always within. As Tenzin sat by the monastery's window, watching the snow fall like silent prayers, he felt the pull of the practice calling him deeper. He knew he could not turn away, not from the path, not from the guru who had become his anchor, his mirror, his guide. The story was only beginning, and the promise of what lay ahead was too radiant to resist, the dance of surrender. The snow had settled into a quiet blanket over the monastery, muffling the world outside as Tenzin sat cross-legged in the meditation hall, his breath a steady rhythm against the cold. The butter lamps cast golden pools of light, their flames dancing as if whispering secrets of the deities they honored. Tenzin's mind, however, was far from still. The initial clarity he had tasted in the cave retreat now felt like a fleeting dream, replaced by a restless tide of thoughts. He visualized the Yab-Yum deities, compassion and wisdom entwined in radiant embrace, but the image wavered, dissolving into doubts. Was he worthy of this practice? Could he truly embody the union of such vast forces? The questions gnawed at him, each one a pebble in the stream of his focus, threatening to divert its flow. Yet, as always, Lama Dorje's presence was a steady anchor. The guru sat across from him, his eyes calm yet piercing, as if he could see the storm brewing in Tenzin's heart. When the mind resists, Lama Dorje said softly, it is not a sign of failure, but of progress. Stay with it. Trust the path. Those words, simple yet profound, were like a spark in the dark, reigniting Tenzin's resolve to press forward. The path of Yab-Yum, Tenzin was learning, was not a straight line but a spiral, circling ever deeper into the self. Each turn brought new challenges, new shadows to face, and without a guru's guidance it was easy to lose the way. Lama Dorje had a way of sensing Tenzin's struggles before he spoke them aloud. One morning, as they walked along a cliffside path, the wind carrying the faint chant of distant monks, Lama Dorje stopped and pointed to a hawk soaring above. See how it rides the wind? He asked. It does not fight the current, nor does it surrender to it. It trusts the air beneath its wings. Tenzin watched, mesmerized, as the hawk dipped and rose with effortless grace. Your practice is like that hawk, Lama Dorje continued. You cannot force the deities to appear, nor can you chase them. Trust the guidance and they will come. The words landed like a gentle rain, softening the hard edges of Tenzin's frustration. He realized then that his struggle was not with the practice itself, but with his own need to control it. Lama Dorje's role was to teach him to let go, to trust the unseen currents of the mind. The guru's guidance was not always gentle, however. There were moments when Lama Dorje's words cut like a blade, slicing through Tenzin's illusions with surgical precision. One such moment came during a group teaching, when Tenzin, emboldened by his recent progress, boasted of a vivid vision he had experienced in meditation, a radiant Yab-Yum deity pair, their embrace pulsing with light. The other disciples murmured in awe, but Lama Dorje's expression remained unreadable. Describe this vision, he said, his voice calm but firm. Tenzin spoke eagerly, detailing the colors, the forms, the overwhelming sense of bliss. When he finished, Lama Dorje was silent for a long moment, then asked, "And who was it that saw this vision?" Tenzin faltered, confused. "I did," he replied. Lama Dorje shook his head. "The eye is the veil. Your vision is beautiful, but it is still a projection of your ego. Let it go and see what lies beyond." The words stung, but they also awakened something in Tenzin, a hunger to see beyond his own pride, to touch the truth Lama Dorje was pointing toward. The guru's challenge was not a rebuke, but an invitation, a call to dive deeper into the practice. This interplay of challenge and compassion was the heartbeat of the guru-disciple bond. Tenzin recalled another story Lama Dorje had shared, this time about a disciple named Kunga, who had come to him decades earlier. Kunga was a nomad, his life spent herding yaks across the high plateaus, his heart fierce with devotion but untamed by discipline. When Kunga began the Yab-Yum practice, he was overwhelmed by visions, some divine, others terrifying. He saw deities in radiant union, but also demons clawing at his mind. In his fear, he nearly abandoned the path, convinced he was unworthy. Lama Dorje, sensing Kunga's despair, took him to a frozen lake and told him to gaze into its icy surface. "What do you see?" he asked. Kunga saw his own reflection, distorted by cracks in the ice. "That is your mind," Lama Dorje said. "The visions, the fears, the deities, they are all reflections. Trust me to guide you through them." Kunga, trembling but resolute, followed his guru's instructions, meditating under his watchful eye. Slowly, the demons faded, and the deities became clear, their embrace a mirror of Kunga's own inner peace. Lama Dorje's guidance had been his lifeline, pulling him back from the edge of doubt. Tenzin, too, needed such a lifeline. As his practice deepened, he began to encounter the raw power of Yab-Yum, not just as a visualization, but as a force that stirred the deepest layers of his being. One night, during a solitary meditation, he felt a surge of energy, like a river breaking its banks. The deities appeared, but their embrace was no longer serene. It was fierce, almost overwhelming, as if they were pulling him apart and stitching him back together. Panic rose in his chest, his breath shallow, his mind screaming to stop. But then he heard Lama Dorje's voice, not in the room, but in his heart. "Stay with it. I am here." Those words were a tether, grounding him in the chaos. He breathed, letting the energy flow, trusting his guru's unseen presence. When he emerged from the meditation, his body was trembling, but his mind was clear, filled with a quiet joy he could not explain. He knew then that the guru was not just a teacher but a bridge to the infinite, holding space for Tenzin to face the vastness of his own mind. The days that followed were a dance of effort and surrender. Lama Dorje guided Tenzin with subtle nudges, a gesture, a question, a silence that spoke louder than words. One afternoon, as they sat grinding barley for Sampa, Lama Dorje shared another insight. The Yab-Yum practice is not about becoming something else, but about recognizing what you already are. The guru does not give you the truth, he helps you see it. Tenzin felt those words like a spark, igniting a longing to know himself in a way he never had before. Each meditation, each moment of doubt, each flicker of clarity was a step closer to that truth, guided by the steady hand of his guru. The path was not easy. There were moments when Tenzin wanted to turn back, to retreat into the comfort of his old self. But Lama Dorje's presence was a quiet force, urging him forward, promising that the light was worth the struggle. As the winter deepened, Tenzin felt the practice taking root in him, like a seed breaking through frozen earth. The deities in his visualizations were no longer distant figures but living presences, their embrace a reflection of the balance he was beginning to find within. Yet he knew this was only the beginning. The path of Yab-Yum was vast, its depths uncharted, and without Lama Dorje's guidance he might wander forever. As he sat by the monastery's hearth, watching the flames leap and twist, Tenzin felt a pull, a call to go deeper still. The guru's teachings were like a song, each note leading to the next, and Tenzin could not resist its melody. The journey was far from over, and the promise of what lay ahead was a fire in his heart, too bright to ignore. The embrace of awakening. The monastery seemed to hum with a quiet energy as spring crept into the valley, melting snow into streams that sang beneath the cliffs. Tenzin sat in the meditation hall, his body still, but his mind alight with the pulse of Yab-Yum. The practice had become a living current within him, each visualization of the deity's embrace drawing him closer to a truth he could feel but not yet name. The air was thick with the scent of juniper incense, and the butter lamps glowed like tiny suns, their light a reminder of Lama Dorje's unwavering presence. Yet, as Tenzin's practice deepened, new shadows emerged, moments when the deity's radiance felt too vast, too fierce, as if they might consume him. His heart wavered, caught between awe and fear, but Lama Dorje's voice, steady as the mountain itself, cut through the doubt. The light you fear is your own. Trust it, and trust me to guide you. Those words were a lifeline, pulling Tenzin back to the path, urging him to surrender to the practice's transformative fire. The journey of Yab-Yum, Tenzin now understood, was not about mastering the practice, but about letting it master him. The guru was the key, not by imposing rules, but by clearing the way for Tenzin to see his own nature. One crisp morning, as they sat on a rocky outcrop overlooking the valley, Lama Dorje handed Tenzin a small mirror. "Look," he said simply. Tenzin gazed into it, expecting to see his own face, but the reflection shimmered, fleeting images of the Yab-Yum deities flickering across its surface. Startled, he looked to Lama Dorje, who smiled. "The mirror shows what you are ready to see. The practice is not outside you, it is you." The words struck Tenzin like a bell, resonating deep within. He realized that the guru's role was not to give him the deities, but to help him recognize them as reflections of his own mind. The trust he placed in Lama Dorje was not blind faith, but a bridge to his own awakening, a path he could not have walked alone. Yet, the path was not without its trials. As Tenzin's visualizations grew more vivid, he faced a new challenge: attachment. The deity's embrace was so radiant, so blissful, that he found himself clinging to the experience, craving its return in every meditation. This craving clouded his mind, turning the practice into a chase for fleeting moments of ecstasy. Sensing this, Lama Dorje called Tenzin to his quarters one evening, where a single lamp cast long shadows on the earthen walls. "You are chasing the reflection of the moon in the water," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "The moon is always there, but you must stop grasping at its image." To illustrate, he told Tenzin of another disciple, Lamo, who had faced a similar struggle years before. Lamo, a gifted practitioner, became so enamored with the bliss of Yab-Yum that she lost sight of its purpose. Her meditations became a pursuit of sensation, not truth. Lama Dorje had guided her gently, teaching her to hold the experience lightly, like a feather on the wind. "Let the bliss arise and pass," he had told her. "It is not the goal, but a signpost." Lamo's trust in her guru allowed her to release her attachment, and her practice blossomed into a profound realization of non-duality. Tenzin listened, his heart stirring, knowing he needed to follow the same path. Lama Dorje's guidance was like a river, sometimes calm, sometimes swift, always leading Tenzin forward. One day, during a group retreat, he instructed Tenzin to meditate outdoors, beneath a vast sky streaked with clouds. "See the deities not in your mind, but in the world," he said. Tenzin sat, the wind brushing his face, and as he visualized the Yab-Yum embrace, something shifted. The deities were no longer confined to his inner vision. They were in the sky, in the rustling grass, in the pulse of his own breath. The world itself seemed to pulse with their union, compassion and wisdom woven into every moment. Overwhelmed, Tenzin felt tears sting his eyes, not from sorrow, but from a joy so deep it felt like surrender. When he returned to Lama Dorje, he could barely speak. The guru simply nodded, his eyes alight with understanding. "You are beginning to see," he said, "but do not stop here. Trust the path to take you further." That moment marked a turning point, but it was not the end. The practice of Yab-Yum, Tenzin realized, was a lifelong dance, each step revealing new layers of truth. Lama Dorje's guidance remained essential, not because Tenzin was incapable, but because the guru's presence was a mirror for his own potential. One evening, as they shared a meal of tsampa by the hearth, Lama Dorje shared a final story of his own guru who had guided him through the same practice decades ago. "I thought I had reached the peak," Lama Dorje said, his voice soft with memory. "But my teacher showed me that there is no peak, only a vastness that keeps unfolding. He held the space for me to see it, just as I hold it for you." Tenzin felt a warmth spread through him, a gratitude so profound it bordered on reverence. The guru was not just a guide, but a living embodiment of the practice, a reminder that the path was always alive, always possible. As the months passed, Tenzin's practice deepened into a quiet rhythm, like the breath of the mountains themselves. The deity's embrace was no longer a vision to chase, but a state of being, a balance of compassion and wisdom that flowed through him in every moment. Yet he knew this was not his achievement alone. It was the fruit of Lama Dorje's guidance, the trust that had carried him through doubt, fear, and attachment. One dawn, as he sat in meditation, the deities appeared with a clarity he had never known, their embrace a radiant stillness that held the entire universe. Tenzin felt himself dissolve into that stillness, not lost, but found, whole in a way he could not describe. When he opened his eyes, Lama Dorje was there, his smile a silent affirmation. No words were needed. The guru had led him to the edge of the infinite, and Tenzin had taken the leap. The journey was far from over, but Tenzin no longer feared its twists and turns. The Yab-Yum practice, he understood, was not a goal, but a way of seeing, a way of being. Lama Dorje's guidance had been the key, not by giving answers, but by asking questions, not by leading, but by walking beside him. As Tenzin gazed out at the valley, now green with the first signs of spring, he felt the practice alive within him, a flame that would never go out. The guru's teachings echoed in his heart, a melody too beautiful to resist, calling him to keep walking, keep trusting, keep awakening to the truth that had always been there.